The clock is ticking in Afghanistan on the continuing presence of U.S. forces and on the presidency of Hamid Karzai. And yet Karzai has chosen this moment to lash out again at his supposed allies in the United States and the West. They did not work for me. They worked against me, Karzai said in an interview this weekend. America has left me with a mess. And it's just the latest broadside in a litany of anti-American diatribes. Karzai accuses them of, quote, waging psychological war on his people. He calls them rivals while calling the Taliban his brothers. And he's released dozens of prisoners over U.S. objections. But this also comes at a crucial moment for the very future of Afghanistan itself, just as the United States and NATO push him to sign a status of forces agreement that would keep some Western troops in Afghanistan and billions of aid dollars flowing. Frankly, Karzai's erstwhile international backers are hoping that Afghanistan's presidential elections in April usher in a new, more workable relationship. The campaign has begun with several vying to replace Karzai. My first guest tonight is one of them, Dr. Abdullah, the former foreign minister of Afghanistan and also the runner-up to President Karzai in the 2009 election. He's joining me now by phone from Kabul because the security risks are so high, we didn't want him to have to leave into the city in the dead of night. Dr. Abdullah, thank you very much for joining me. And let's just start with the security risks, because two of your campaign aides were, in fact, killed this past weekend.
Thank you, Christian. Yes, unfortunately, on the eve of the start of campaign, two of my campaigners in Herat were assassinated. And what we need about it is a thorough investigation to be launched as soon as possible. The investigation is there, but we want a result out of this, so that does not affect the other campaigners for other candidates throughout the country. There is a security risk. The environment is not risk-free. But when I look at the enthusiasm of the Afghan people to participate in the elections, that part of it is encouraging, and it's highly encouraging.
Let me ask you about the security issues. And, of course, all this is also tied in the future to whether or not any U.S. or NATO troops remain. Why do you think that President Karzai has suddenly turned against the United States very publicly, as I described?
It's quite a few years since President Karzai has made anti-foreigner or anti-Americans line or rhetorics as his principal policy, and there is nothing to do in it as far as the interest of Afghanistan is concerned. We need the continued military, security, and financial support from the international community led by the United States. So there is something personal in it as well. So whatever it is, it's not in the interest of Afghanistan to turn the relations between Afghanistan and the whole international community to the status that it is at the moment.
So let me ask you, if you were elected, or, the West seems to be hoping a new president in Afghanistan might sign the so-called status of forces agreement that would keep U.S. and other troops beyond the pullout at the end of this year. Would you sign that?
Of course, when we are asking President Karzai to sign it, and when we say that it's in the interest of Afghanistan that agreement is signed sooner rather than later, that means that we will be ready to sign it when time comes. Afghanistan needs for years to come financial support, security, military support, in order to lay the foundation for stability in this country and to be able to fight against terrorism and strengthen our own institutions. So that is in the interest of Afghanistan, and I think it's highly risky what President Karzai is pursuing at the moment. It has created a shadow over every other thing which is happening in this country, and the people are extremely worried, the people of Afghanistan.
And very briefly, you know, the U.S. Special Inspector for Afghanistan has issued a very tough report, basically saying that many of Afghanistan's own ministries are incapable of administrating all the money that the U.S. is pouring in. What would you do to combat that kind of worry and to combat that kind of corruption that continues to plague even the ministries there?
Unfortunately, the issue of rule of law, absence of rule of law, and corruption in different institutions, this is something that we are suffering from it, and it needs a political will to begin with in order to fight it, to fight against it. If somebody takes it like business as usual and ignore it, or while being criticized for not fighting against corruption, accuse the others of corruption, that's not the solution.
Right.
Recognition of corruption in absence of rule of law as big problems in this country is something that has to be done, and then the resolve to deal with it, and then, of course, strategies and policies to be able to deal with it.
All right, Dr. Abdullah, thank you very much indeed.